Welcome, boomers and juniors, to the JBJ podcast. Tonight we will be talking about the Tulsa Massacre of 1921.
J B J J B J.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us. Today's sponsor is JSAA, Justice Society for African Americans. Thanks to the JSAA, they help African Americans in need. And that's what we need in this society, because this society is slowly breaking down. But with them, this one new move towards that step of glory.
This nation has been plagued with several racial unrest with the past couple of centuries, and it may happen tomorrow, maybe even to your loved ones. So, join us today and our sponsor to chime in on helping those in need. Donate now, please.
Meet the two new podcasters in town. We will take you from side to side and up or down. We talk about serious and sometimes comedic events that happened in our history, and we like to add a twist to add some flavor to our story.
On June 1st, 1921, an unfortunate event unfolded in Tulsa that was the result of many people dying. And today, we will be discussing the dark days of Tulsa.
Jackie, and I am Nelson. So, we are just going to be exploring these dark days back in 1921. The massacre that started it all. The very big events. So, we got two books here today. My book is Across the Tracks, Remembering Greenwood, Black Wall Street, and the Tulsa Race Massacre. Jackie, would you like to be kind and share us yours?
Yes, my book is The Angel of Greenwood. In fact, this is a fictional book depicting the Tulsa Race Massacre. Basically, it builds up to that moment of that inevitability.
I will start with my book, then we can move on to Jackie's book. Our books take place during a dark time. This was the early 1900s. And my book starts out with a man named Gurley, O.W. Gurley, and he's a wealthy black businessman from Arkansas, and he's like, oh, let me buy some land. Okay, so I mean, let's be honest, we all like land. Who doesn't like land?
Yes.
Yeah, see, so
Free real estate.
exactly. He bought this land and he started to make buildings, a house, a church, a grocery store, anything you could think of almost, and all your essential needs. Not too many, but just the right amount. Then the white people are like, as long as they stay on their side, we're good. And that is when Mr. Gurley created Greenwood Avenue. Then everything started to spiral upwards. We had repair shops, we had more churches, we had families, we had homes, we had people gathering, coming to this little town called Greenwood. Not only that, the man himself, Booker T. Washington, came and he named it the Negro Wall Street. A man came along and decided to create Greenwood patriotic, turn it patriotic. And Gurley agreed, and that man went by the name of J.B. Stratford. And actually, Mr. Stratford, he created more buildings too. He created a ballroom, a library, real estate, and now you got all these different people. You got Thomas R. Gentry. He was the first African American in Tulsa that became a real estate magnate. Then you got Dr. R.T. Bridgewater, Tulsa's first African American physician. You got Dr. J. Littlejohn, Tulsa's first African American dentist, who I need to visit soon because my teeth are hurting. And you got Reverend C.L. Netherland, a Baptist minister who owned one of the first barbershops in Tulsa.
That's a lot of people.
Yeah.
a lot of interesting people, a lot of interesting individuals who had lives
Yeah.
before the inevitable, unfortunately.
And yeah, let me get to that. So Simon Barry, that's another person who drove around town. But then out of nowhere, a boy went around, and it's like accusations about this boy. His name was Dick Rowland, and he was accused for assaulting a white woman named Sarah Page, and that's where this whole bruise started, and that's when everybody came together, the white people, the black people, and one shot was fired, and boom, whole spark went out. Then these deputies started handing these badges to white men that were armed and said, "You are now a deputy." Then after that, they had to rebuild brick by brick because their community was destroyed. The next winter, they sung and they enjoyed. That is my book. Now, let's go to Jackie's book. Go ahead.
So, there's a lot more to this book that describes the stuff in a fictional light. Basically, the story talks about two characters that are mainly focused in the story, Isaiah and Angel, in which both of them have had a form of relationship with each other for pretty much most of the entire story, essentially.
Yeah, and I should mention that his book is fiction and my book is nonfiction. So go ahead.
There we go. Okay, so anyways, going through the story, it does build up to the riots, and as it does, there's a lot of development that goes through on the story. Basically, going to Isaiah, he has a personal interest of W.E.B. Du Bois, and his major passion of him, basically. He writes journals about him, basically reading down the stories that he's made and everything else in between, essentially. And in the middle of the story, his book gets taken away by a girl who I don't exactly know the name of, but I think it goes by the name of Dorothy May. And she takes the book away from him. At first glance, he had no idea who or what happened to it. But eventually he would find out. And basically, throughout the story, I mean, it mainly talks about Isaiah's journey and also Angel's journey. Basically, those two characters. And at the very end of the book, they both meet up. They kiss with each other, after the entire story. And I believe Isaiah goes down to Angel's house. And basically, well, before that though, during the whole, riot that happened, Isaiah was fishing around the town trying to save people, essentially.
Yeah.
And the very end of the story, going back to that one, let's see. Let me grab a page out of the story just to, figure that out.
Just rip it out of the book.
Yeah, rip it out of the book.
Let's talk about the media voices in the single stories. I feel like, to be honest, Tulsa is a big event, and I feel like there's one collective single story for it. You know what I'm saying? I feel like that the single story is about these white people trying to get against these black people, and these white people are trying to paint them as you're supposed to be there, but hold on, one of your little buddies got out of line. That's not working. Now y'all are all animals. Get out of my face. You're about to get cuffed and you're about to get shot. That's what I think. I think that the single story of this book, and probably in your book too, likely, I feel like it's that these African Americans of Greenwood are painted to be villains.
Going on from that, I mean, historically speaking, that's been the case for a lot of things. I mean, if you know the events that unfolded in it and
Yeah.
outside of it. I mean, what brings up this situation, a lot of build up basically throughout the whole event.
So the single story is gonna be just like all the other single stories that were in the U.S. at the time. Because you gotta think, they were jealous. They didn't want them to be there, even though they had no problem at first. But when Dick Rowland got out of line, it's like, nope, don't hold him back. Bring him with us. He's with us now. We're going to lynch him, and he's going to die. So let's talk about the muted voices. The muted voices, I believe that one good muted voice. You could say O.W. Gurley himself was a muted voice, but he broke that because not only was he a wealthy black businessman, but he broke the barrier and bought land himself to cultivate. And I think that's very, very, very wise of him. Actually, in the first page, you can see him with the oil rig. So that's how you know that man had bands. That man had pockets.
But for muted voice characters, there are really two main characters I already mentioned, Angel and Isaiah. Both of those characters are muted. More specifically, I would say Angel is one of the two that are more muted, because it seems like she does have an impact, but in a very, muted voice derogatory, situation, if you will.
We promote justice, identity, mercy, and community. Let me tell y'all what that's about. So justice. We support justice, not only for everybody, but the ones in need, like the minorities. We believe at Jumping Boomer Juniors that justice is important, because without justice, there would be so much corruptivity in the world that it wouldn't even make sense. There already is corruptivity out there. Don't get me wrong, but it'll be more. Now, identity is important because that is you. That is you. That's what makes up you. And plus, identity is true to the people that are in need. And mercy. It's always good to show mercy. Strike first, show no mercy. But our motto is never strike, but show some mercy. And community.
Yeah.
It's always good to join in community and always to join in a group. Okay.
So it does play a key part throughout all these stories we've been going through so far. Tune in to our next video, which we will be discussing the unfortunate events that unfolded on the RMS Titanic, and along with other things that relate to the ship and its sister ships.
After that, we'll take a look into the third episode, which will be about Vietnam.
And if you still are interested in this podcast, episode 4 will discuss the events that also unfolded during the Great Wars, but also other wars as well, including the American Civil War, the Korean War, etc.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are now at the end of the podcast. Thank you for tuning in and listening through this episode.
Until then,
we will see you in the next one.